Hi, I'm Ross Batson. Thank you for watching this video in regard to building a deck for you. There are a few things that we need to consider before we go ahead and build a deck, and that is that we have to look at the council approval process and a building process. Now, the council approval process is called the planning process, and we have to take into account a whole pile of things. We take into account everything that's in this book, the building code, and the building regulations, which is only that thick. Now, they're things that I know back to front when I'm looking at all the things that we need to consider for building a deck and building any houses or any other construction. The planning process overlooks things like how it's situated on the land, or how it impacts on neighbours, how it's going to be used and things like that. It's to protect you and protect your neighbours. For example, if you build a deck right beside a fence line and you can look in over the neighbour's fence, they don't look at that as being favourable. And we have to do other measures like putting up walls like we have here to restrict access or visibility into your neighbours. The second thing is the building process, and that's where we have to have a set of plans, and those plans are noted for their structural integrity, and where it's situated, how it's situated. It also impacts on how other things like fire alarms in your home are required. So we have to consider all these things before we even start building for you. The other thing with a building permit, which is one of the things we must have, is that it protects you. It has somebody come out and checks to make sure that what I'm doing is correct, and it also protects you because you can then legally say that you've got a deck built on the back of your property. Therefore, you can insure it. If you don't go down that process, there is no way that you can say that the house has got a deck on the back, and therefore if the house burns down, you're not covered for that. The next thing is we can design your deck to suit your needs. So if you want to enclose it and have space that is secluded, then we take all those sort of things into account at that stage. So really consider what you're going to be using the deck for, and thoroughly think through the opportunities that may present themselves in the future. Say you're going to put a pool on in the future, or a barbecue area out from it. You might consider different ways of building your deck to suit that in the future. Okay. One of the things we need to consider then is the decking type that we use. Now, there are a whole range of products on the market. There are new plastic products that are really good for round pools. There are different types of timbers. There's pine, which is a very common Australian plantation variety. There's a piece of pine, it's very yellow in colour when it's stained, but if left untreated, it tends to crack and deteriorate. Now, I personally would prefer to see you build a deck out of a hardwood. Now, there are a few options there. There's your sanded merbau, or there's a piece of merbau. Now, it's a little bit stained. That one's been sitting in the weather for a little while, but that often comes like that in the first instance. When you wash it down for the first couple of times and then stain it, it doesn't show that up. I'll show you an example in a moment. Another alternative is an Australian timber. That's blackwood or spotted gum, and that is a very hardy product. Now, it's really hard, and we have to really do a lot more work with that as a product to put that down, but it's beautiful. Here's a piece that I've had out in my garden, just sitting there for the last 6 months. Now, as you can see, that's in fairly good condition, considering it's had no treatment to it at all. Now, what I'm talking about the treatment is, when you finish building your deck, you need to consider keeping the upkeep on it. Now, that's just a matter of putting a stain over the top of it every 12 months or so. It's a simple thing. You go out and you wash the deck down. If you don't do that, then the deck will go grey, and it might be a look that you're looking for, but if you're wanting that nice, rich red look, then you need to keep on putting the oil on. Now, I'm just going to show you a small deck a little example of a deck that I've designed. Now, a couple of the things that I do when building a deck, we use a treated pine joist underneath, and then I wrap the joist in a plastic membrane. Now, that plastic membrane there, as you can see, sits down a little bit, and if water comes down through the gaps, it then doesn't sit on the joist, and therefore it doesn't rot it out. Now, it also looks good through from the top, that you can't see the joists underneath. But the main protection is that it's like a big umbrella and it takes the water away from underneath, and therefore it protects everything. The other thing that I do is there's ribs on these. Now a lot of people make the mistake of putting the ribs up. Now I put the ribs down, and that's so that the air breathes through underneath. So when it does rain on top, water gets underneath, has a chance for the water to dissipate away from the deck. Therefore the deck will last longer. The next thing that I consider is a highly important one. A lot of builders go out and they use a gun nail to actually put the deck down. Now if you can see closely that there's different heights. That one's raised, that one's deep into the timber, and they're all over the place. And that's very consistent of somebody that's using a nail gun to nail it down. Also, there are a lot of nails that are collated nails, and they're on a wire spiral, and when they're nailed down, there's a little bit of nail, the little collation sticks up, and if you've got bare feet, you can cut your feet on them. Now, I don't do that. I refuse to use that method. I personally use a hand nail. Now, this takes a lot longer to do, but I hand drill them, and then I hand nail them down. Now, that nail is a spiral nail, so it's got a curl on it. That curls down into the timber and it locks on nice and tightly. It's also got a beautiful domed head on it, so it's nice on your feet. And when you're hand nailing them down, they end up being nice and smooth all the way across. And the other beautiful thing is, it's a beautiful straight line all the way across the deck. So that's one of the things that I take a lot of pride in when I'm doing the decks. It takes a bit longer to do, but it's worth it because I know that the result that you want is going to be a supreme one. The other option is that we can use a screw. Now I use a stainless steel screw. This is more suited to up on a wall, for example, where you can use it as a feature because they are raised over the top. Now you can do 2 screws or a single screw. Now the single screw works beautifully and it looks stunning. But they're the 3 options. There's another way that a lot of builders use, and they use a tiny little nail, about that thin. And you can't see those nails, but they tend to pull out over time and you end up with cupping and dipping all over the boards. So my option is by far for me, I think that I don't ever need to come back to your house, whereas somebody else's deck, you go and have a look at it and they start cupping and carrying on, and nobody wants that. So the best option, building it with a collated nail. It doesn't split the timber, it makes it really nice, and that's the result that I'm looking for, so that you can look at your deck and be as proud as I am of building it. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video, and good luck with your project.